Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 240 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. We're back from Vegas, and we got a ton of news to talk about, starting off, of course, with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this week, Richard? Are you recovered from our GP Vegas trip?
Yes, I slept like 20 hours when I got home. Ate like a million meals to to catch up on all the food and sleep we were lacking, and then played way too much Modern. So yeah, I'm totally caught up.
Well, that is good. It's good to be back. And how about you, Krim? Did you go to like PAX or something already? Did you already go to another trip after Vegas?
Yeah, I went to Crunchyroll convention, which I'm not gonna lie to you, back-to-back conventions definitely took a toll on me. But, you know, I finally rested up yesterday. Well, I got to sleep more than 4 hours yesterday, so feels pretty good.
Oh, I don't know. That's what I realized coming back from Vegas this weekend. Like, how do people do this every weekend? I'm like, follow so many people on Twitter that are like going from tournament to tournament or convention to convention. I don't know how they do it. Like, major respect to those people. I do not think I could handle it. I go to like 2 tournaments a year, and that's enough.
They must have like the craziest immune system to avoid all of like the convention flus. I'm surprised.
I'm also pretty surprised I don't have the con cruds. I think it's because I hand sanitized every 30 seconds.
Yeah, I managed to dodge that this year as well, which is good because last year I got super sick after Vegas, and that was rough. But anyway, enough Vegas talk. I'm glad everyone's back. We have a fun cast today. We have a lot to talk about, really. 2 main topics. First off, Modern, post-banning Modern, our new Modern format. Gonna spend a while talking about that. And then we will also talk about some Arena stuff, especially the historic announcement on Arena. And then, of course, Fishmail, which we missed last week. Gotta get to Fishmail this week. So before we jump into all of that, we have a sponsor today. Our show is brought to you by SpikesAcademy.com. And Spikes Academy is presenting a new course about Limited with Hall of Famer Ben Stark. In the course, Ben will teach you how to build better draft and seal decks and how to evaluate cards in Limited. So get ready to crush your next pre-release tournament with Spikes Academy and the new Limited course with Ben Stark. You can even use the code GOLDFISH to get 5% off over at SpikesAcademy.com today. So thank you so much to Spikes Academy for supporting the show. And with our sponsorship stuff out of the way, let's talk Modern. So we had the big banning, Faithless Looting gone, Stoneforge in the format, Hogak, of course, we knew that was happening, that's gone. Have you guys been playing Modern in the last week since we've had the banning? What do you think about this format? What do you think about the bannings? Let me know. What do you think about Modern?
So Modern is so good right now. Like,
Yeah.
you queue up and you can play like 20 matches and play like 20 different decks, like the way Modern used to be. So it is so, and it's slowed down. So when I play a mid-range deck, it's not like, oh, I'm dead already, right? Like, oh, you can actually play games of Magic. There's interaction. Things are happening. So actually, I think Modern is in a really good spot. Stoneforge Mystic kind of sucks. Even in this like grindy, my experience with it is not a lot of people are playing Stoneforge decks, and when they do play, they seem really underpowered. Maybe you guys have some special lists, but I've been playing a lot of non-black Jund. I have cut all the black from my Jund list.
Wait, no.
This is what it's come down to, boys.
Does that mean you're all in on Ren and 6?
Yes, I am actually. So I played Red and 6 Jund for a bit more, right? After all of our talk and makes, I'm like, no, this still sucks, right? This card is bad. It doesn't help the Jund game plan, and it stretches my mana base, and Thoughtseize kind of sucks. Right? Because what I noticed is every single match, I would always sideboard out Thoughtseizes and Lilies. Right? So I'm like, what is the point of these cards? So I actually just cut those all together and replaced with Utopia Sprawl, Arbor Elf, and Blood Moon. And this deck is actually really good. I've gone, let's see, I went 3-2 and then 3-4-1s. So whatever that combined record is, which is like an amazing record for a mid-range deck, right? My normal record with Jund is probably like 3-2.
Wow. So that is very impressive.
A turn 2 Blood Moon will get you. And then since you're all in Red and 6, you're like loaded up with Seasoned Pyromancers and Tireless Trackers. Whereas Jund doesn't have the luxury of playing so many. You're only playing like 2-ofs and 1-ofs and things like that. So, and I'm playing 3 cycle lands, so I can actually get value out of Red and 6. And then the spice is Storm Breath Dragons and 1 Bane Fire. And like you turn to, because everyone's trying to play Stoneforge Mystic in their random shell, so they're all going 3 colors. And then you slap down a turn 2 Blood Moon and they're dead, right? Yes. And then you can actually finish the game out. So it's way more disruptive than a Thoughtseize and an Inquisition could ever be.
Oh, welcome to the dark side, Richard. Once you cast a turn 2 Blood Moon, you never go back. That's all you want to do.
you know what's so sad though? I would play turn 2 Blood Moon against Tron and still lose, and I'm like, are you serious? So I had to add like Collector Oops to the sideboard to actually kill Tron. But I at one point I was up to 4 Blood Moons and 3 Magus of the Moons. But now I'm just down to 4 Blood Moons and 1 Magus sideboard.
Okay.
That's so many Blood Moon
But
effects.
against 2 color decks, you still auto win with Blood Moon. It's like actually crazy.
Yeah, Blood Moon?
A turn 2 Blood Moon, they haven't fetched, or they only fetched up 1 land already, and they just lose, right? They can't keep up. They can still play Magic, but they're like too slow now, and you're gonna overpower them with your actual, Jund threats, which are all red and green at the moment.
I kind of want to play a Stoneforge Blood Moon deck. I was actually thinking about that before the podcast. Like, that could actually be kind of sweet. Like, turn 2 Blood Moon and Stoneforge, kind of like the Boros Prison deck, but without the bad prison pieces and with...
So you like Stoneforge. What are your guys' takes on Stoneforge? I actually think it's a really bad card.
Crim, what is your experience
Good,
been?
bad?
So I played like 4 leagues total. I went 2-3, 3-2, and then 4-1, 4-1. I tried it in Esper, and I'm not gonna lie, it's cool. I don't know if it's what I want in a control deck, to be completely honest with you.
I was gonna ask you. You played it in a control shell, right? Or
right.
Did you play it in a mid range or tempo?
I played it. All 4 leagues were in a control shell, and there were games like where it was obviously just awesome, right? Like it helped my burn matchup significantly, especially with the SCG event that happened this weekend. Everyone brought burn, and unless somebody starts main decking ways to deal with the Batterskull, I think if I get Stoneforge on and get the Batterskull out, it's pretty much over. But it's very medium. Now, maybe I should just, the only thing I got from it was that I want to play Esper, like, mid-range. I noticed that Mentor, Monastery Mentor is absurd, and I don't know if that's just, really that needs Stoneforge, and maybe I could just play Esper mid-range, like Esper spells with Teferi and Spell Queller. But, like that, so far, it's just been decent. It's not format warping, and it doesn't feel like... it doesn't feel like I auto win the game even when I have Stoneforge.
Yeah, I think so. I have also been playing Stoneforge. I cheated a little bit on my vacation. I couldn't resist. I've been playing the Bant deck that I think I showed you guys right before you left Vegas that I just kind of threw together, and start off with 2 5-0s in a row while I was still in Vegas. Then I went 4-1 and then 3-2. So I don't know if that means the deck is getting worse or my luck is just getting worse, but I was been really impressed with it. It is definitely not the control shell. It's more of definitely a mid-range, creature-y flash style shell. I had some cryptics and stuff, and I actually cut those to play more threats. So it's more of a creature value deck, and I don't know how good Stoneforge is. I think it's a good threat, and I wouldn't cut it from the deck, but I'm not sure how responsible it actually is for most of my wins. It seems like a lot of my wins are actually 3 fairy and spell queller is just an insane combination, and then
fairy
restoration angel to blink the spell queller and
welcome to Crib.
Yeah, seriously, welcome, Seb.
I didn't realize that synergy existed though, and now I'm addicted to it. It's so good. That static ability is just so insane with spell queller. So yeah, but the deck has been really good. I don't know how much of it is Stoneforge. Occasionally Stoneforge is great, and I've been playing the red black sword from Modern Horizons, and I actually think that sword is really good. I was playing it because I thought it would be a good way to win Stoneforge mirrors, but I've actually been amazed how good it is against other decks where you can snipe artifacts and Karns and stuff against Tron. You just tutor it up your sword, equip it, and kill a Karn with it. I've had blue-white control decks just scoop to it because you're blowing up maybe their Stoneforge equipment and killing their Jace or whatever. It's really good against Whir decks too, all the Wurza decks where you're just picking off random artifacts. So That's been
Yeah.
my sleeper, I think. I think that card is actually like, I don't know if I'd main deck it, but it's one of my go-to sideboard cards, and it's been very impressive.
Yeah, no, after Vegas and we all sat around and then like, you know, Richard and we were all talking about Sword of Sinew and Steel, I then threw it also in my
you
deck.
guys all mocked me for it. Yes, I remember. Yes.
You were right.
You're right. I agree. The sword has been the truth. I mean, maybe because of the matchups I got, but I also equipped it, like, just like being able to end of turn, like play Snapcaster and then swing in with the sword picked off so many things, and it was absurd. Like the Whir matchup I had, it was absolutely nuts.
So from the mid-range side, here's my experience with Stoneforge Mystic. It eats a lightning bolt immediately. Okay?
Yes.
And then, like 8 turns later, you can sit there and pick up and drop Batter Skulls, but it is like totally irrelevant, right? Tarmogoyfs are bigger. My Tireless Trackers, my Scavenging Oozes, my Eldrazi, my Karns, like everything is bigger than Batter Skull later in the game. So it's actually pretty bad. And then maybe I'm lucky because I'm playing Jund, but the swords never hit. So if they get like a Feast and Famine, you block with like Seasoned Pyromancer tokens, right? They get a Fire Knights, you block with Tarmogoyf. It's actually pretty hard to actually get a sword to hit without actual evasion. So I actually found that Stoneforge decks actually did nothing, right? And that's not even to talk about the case where you just get Kolaghan's commanded, which feels super good, killing a Batter Skull and getting another effect with it. So I actually think Stoneforge doesn't do much in the mid-range match. And in Legacy, you have 2 things going for you, right? You have Jite, which basically lets you win all creature mirrors. In this case, it really does nothing, right? Like Batter Skull is actually kind of small. Like we talk about how Tarmogoyf is like too undersized. Batter Skull is even worse, right? And then also, you can't get the swords to hit as easily because you don't have a True Name Nemesis. I tried the Hex Drinker plan. It's like really slow. Don't try that. Right? If you have a Progenitus, you don't need a sword on it, okay? But like getting things to hit, you kind of need to play Lingering Souls or something. But then like, it's bad, right? So what Krim said was actually the best plan, where you like end your turn Snapcaster and then try to equip the sword while they're tapped out and kill them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Underwhelming. I think the banning of looting is like way more, impactful than this Stoneforge thing. What it does is make Blood Moon decks so good because everyone tries to jam Stoneforge into their decks, but
I mean, I got paired against Dredge, by the way, a few times still, and
Dredge is still good.
Yeah, like it's now using like Tome Scours and instead of Faithless Looting, and I got paired against one of those playing Tome Scours, Haunted Dead, and doing all of that fancy schmancy stuff, and I luckily was able to beat it drawing my Singleton like Rest in Peace, but
I've been cheating so hard on Graveyard Hate. I went from playing like 6 or 8 Graveyard Hate spells like 2 weeks ago to now I'm like, maybe I'll play like a Rest in Peace. That'll be fine.
That's
like
exactly what I thought.
I'm playing 4 ley lines. But I like this version of Dredge. It's still a little cheaty with their stupid creeping chills, but you can actually fight through all their stuff, right? Like a single Plague Engineer or something like actually just stops their entire deck. So you can actually fight through it, and sometimes they will just auto win, but it's more interactive than like say Hogak, where there's like literally nothing you could do, just wait till you die. So I actually like this version of Dredge. It feels like you can beat it. It feels like you can do something.
And I think it's mostly slow enough compared to Hogak as well that your Graveyard Hate is actually like more relevant in those matchups. Like a Rest in Peace actually is good when like on the draw against Hogak, like Rest in Peace isn't even enough most of the time. So I think that's my biggest takeaway from all of Modern is it feels so fair right now. And I know that might change. It's been a couple weeks. Everyone's trying, like Richard was saying, these Stoneforge decks, these 3-color piles. So maybe it will get more degenerate and more broken, but I have not had this much fun and felt like I was actually playing this much Magic in Modern for literally years. Like, you fire up a Modern queue and there's like a better than 50-50 chance you're actually gonna like play a game of Magic where you're like killing stuff and your opponent's killing your stuff and thought seizing you, and you're like, you play for like 20 minutes and a bunch of turns, and it reminds me of back.
Wait. Let's move the goalpost for a second. So what is happening right now, right? We're getting burned to our face. and
I'm
big
playing
mana decks.
I've been playing up to 4 core Firewalkers in my sideboard, so come at me, Burn. Come at me.
I've been playing Pulse of the Fields, and I've been getting people burn decks with it. Oh, it feels so good.
So, how do we feel about big mana decks? They've kind of made a comeback. So Tron, the good guy during Hogak Summer, right?
Nice
and then,
guy, Tron.
Scapeshift and those kind of decks.
The thing I hate Tron more than basically any deck. You know that about me, but I feel like those decks are beatable. Like if Burn and Tron are at the top of the meta, I feel like you can build a sideboard that's going to give most decks that you're building a chance to compete in those matchups. So while Tron being awesome isn't my favorite thing, it definitely feels more fair and realistic than a lot of our past metas where it was like, oh, like, how do you possibly beat Hogak? How do you possibly beat like Dredge with Golgari Grave Troll? Where it felt like you were kind of helpless. You had this feeling like, well, I can do everything possible and build my deck right, and I'm probably still just like gonna lose because the deck is so busted. I don't feel that way against Burn or Tron, even though I really don't like those decks. So I'm pretty okay with those decks being at the top of the meta because I feel like you can build in a way that targets them and beats them a reasonable amount of the time.
You know it's bad when I'm like, oh, thank God it's only a Karn. I'm like, oh, I can beat Karn. It's fine, right? This is how traumatized we were from Hogak. What about some of the newer kids that we were afraid would take over the meta once Hogak was gone? So like Urza, various Urza decks. I think 4-color Urza won the Open, I believe.
Yeah.
Running 6 decks. I think those would be the 2 new decks that kind of got overshadowed by Hogak. What do you guys think of those decks?
I think Wurza is actually very good. That might be the way to go when, like, you know, if you like your combo-y artifact style of deck.
Yeah, I think Wurza is definitely in the top tier of decks right now, along with, like you said, like Tron and Burn. As far as Renin 6, I think I'm coming around to the idea that even if cards like Stoneforge or Renin 6 are the best cards in the meta, I think that's a meta that I'm kind of happy with. Like, sure, maybe those cards will end up being really good, but those are like incentivizing this like fairer, slower style of play. So maybe like it just feels better, I guess. Like, sure, maybe it's too good. Maybe you're going to lose to it more than you should, but you're actually like getting to play games of Magic. So I think I'm kind of okay. And personally, I have not ran into that many Renin 6s in the leagues that I've been playing. I've been running into like just infinite Stoneforge decks along with Burn and Tron. That has been a huge percentage of the matches that I've played. But I think I'm okay with cards like Renin 6 or Stoneforge being the best cards in the format if that's where we end up.
Yeah.
Jund is bad again, boys. That's why you just dropped the black.
What's the matter with Jund then? Like, why is Jund not good at the moment?
So big mana decks continue to be a problem. Like, just stop seizing people doesn't do anything. Like, for example, when I play my Renin 6 deck against Jund, like, it's an auto win practically because they're starting the game with all these Thought Seizes in their decks, right? We're going to play a mid-range mirror. Your Thought Seizes are dead. And then I'm playing Blood Moon, so that forces them to keep Thoughtseize in post board or get Blood Mooned, and then that also just makes their game fall apart. Like, Jund, it's like Batterskull, right? It's like, it's just not good enough to go long. It's like really hard to go long when people are playing, you know, Eldrazi or Titans off the top or Teferis. Like, you don't, you need to kill them, right? Like, you can't sit there and let people top deck anymore. Like, Modern's too powerful. We need like a bigger Tarmogoyf. And Tarmogoyf's got buffed, right? Because Tarmogoyf on average is now, I would say, a 5-6. Whereas before I would say the average Tarmogoyf's a 4-5. So even though Tarmogoyf's been buffed, it's like he's still not strong enough. He's not that good. Like, a Death Shadow is like better, right? So the same problem remains.
I mean, Death Shadow's also made a return. I've been running into a lot of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe you just play Shadow now, right? Like, that could be your Jund style deck, either the Grixis variant or the Mardu.
I love playing Death Shadow. They're like, yeah, fetch down. I'm like, okay, Banefire you for 9. I'm like, oh, sorry, you're dead.
I would be nervous.
Or you Blood Moon them. They can't lose life anymore. They can't sack their fetches.
I would be nervous
like
about
nice
playing it with
Death
Burn.
Shadows.
Like, the Burn matchup seems really miserable. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks, but I can't imagine you want to play Death Shadow in a Burn-heavy meta. That seems so risky.
Yeah, there's a lot of Burn, and there's also a lot of, like, variants of Death Shadow. That's, like, pretty much been my testing. I mean, I ran into a few like Saheeli combos and stuff like that along the way.
What's the natural enemy of burn?
Soul Sisters.
Like a storm?
I guess.
Soul Sister. That is
Soul
true.
Sisters.
I hope you're ready.
I think just like sideboard cards. I don't know, like, I guess you can probably faster combo decks. I guess like Storm is probably actually
maybe
like,
Urza.
legitimate.
I don't know. Urza seems resilient.
If we shouldn't bring up Storm because I'm trying to keep that off the radar so people stop playing that. So no, Storm is not good. Please do not play Storm. No. That I think Storm right now actually would be pretty solid, right? If everyone's playing a mid-range deck.
Yeah, and people, like, there's some results from the Twiddle Storm deck, too, that are still showing up. So I think, like, I was talking on Twitter earlier today about how much I love Modern right now, and they pointed out that if Stoneforge is what everyone's doing, it's only a matter of time until the fast combo decks show up, because that's like the easiest way to beat Stoneforge decks is just to like kill them before all their value-y stuff is actually relevant. So we'll see. Like maybe this is just the honeymoon period after the bannings when everyone's trying cool things, and maybe like 2 months from now it's going to be all like uninteractive combo decks again and we'll be back to where we were before. But I really feel like even after just like this week, Faithless Looting banning was such a good call by Wizards. I was like 50-50 on whether they should actually ban it, and now that I've got to play the format with it being banned, it was such a good choice, and the format is so much better as a result.
For me, it was like, I always thought that should have gone. Like, that should have been banned way sooner, so I'm happy that they eventually got to it. Now, that just means Ancient Stirrings, your time. Your time is, I'm keeping an eye out on that, on you, and I'm waiting for that to go, because
I don't think it's gonna go, because I think Modern is in a decent place, right? It has to be something like all the top 8 decks are degenerate Ancient Stirrings decks, and we're not seeing that. And granted, it's only a week, right? But how long did it take for us to discover Hogak, right? So I don't think we're gonna find like that crazy deck that actually has like a crazy win percentage, that we're gonna be back to regular Modern where you can play whatever you want, and yes, some deck will be the best deck, but it'll just be a few percentage points above the rest of the field, and you're not gonna have Hogak or Eldrazi or something like that, right? I think we're back to normal Modern where I can sleeve up 75 random cards and then play and like have a good time.
Throne of Eldraine is around the corner, and there could be something new.
Alright, so the next time we see a card with like 6 or more keywords that seems unkillable,
like the first thing I'm gonna look for is it in black and green, or does it have hybrid black and green mana? Does it have a way to get cheated out with the graveyard? Anything coming from the graveyard, delve, or anything like that, I'm gonna immediately say they should ban that.
I mean, I think it's just free spells, but I think without looting, I think it really neuters the graveyard deck. So hopefully we don't have another graveyard deck. But then we'll just complain about the next thing, right? How long until we're sick of Karn?
I've always been sick of Karn.
Yeah, I've been sick of those for years
I've always
now.
been sick of Karn, Richard. That
Karn is fine, man. Like it's the Ugin that gets you.
It's always
Ugin
been
is not fine.
the lesser of two evils. I mean, yeah, I disliked Hogak, but don't you worry, I despise Tron.
So before we talk about Arena and Historic, let's fast forward a year into the future. Where do you think Stoneforge will be? Like, is it going to be a top tier card, a second tier card, third tier, unplayable? Like, what do you think happens with Stoneforge once the metagame kind of shakes out?
It'll be like Tarmogoyf, unplayable.
I like Stoneforge's future, unlike Richard. I think
Really?
I think that maybe right now the configuration of what I have isn't right, but there are blue-white versions running around that is playing the control shell, and it's like got 4 spell snares, 4 mana leaks, like 4 forces of negation, and some amount of cryptics. And like maybe that's the way to go with it. Just like don't try to do the 3 color stuff, just straight up do Azorius. But Stoneforge's future also is bright because let's say there's a new equipment. There could be some kind of new equipment in the next year, especially maybe even Eldraine, and maybe it makes Stoneforge absurdly awesome in Modern, to where it's still balanced. Because to me, I think no matter how good Stoneforge is in Modern, maybe I'll regret saying this, but no matter how good Stoneforge is in Modern, it'll still feel pretty fair, if you would.
What if there's a GT? Tell me how fair that sounds.
I think it's great because I'm not on a creature deck. So
Yeah, you're fine with that. I think Stoneforge is going to be a part of the meta. I would not be surprised if it was a top tier card, or at least a key part of a top tier deck a year from now. But I do think that whatever fears there were of it, like dominating the meta and like you have to play Stoneforge in every deck to be able to compete, that looks pretty silly after a week of playing with Stoneforge in the format. Like, I don't think it's anywhere near that. So I think it's playable and it'll be good in certain decks, but I definitely don't have any fear about it being too good.
Yeah, I think it'll be relegated to tier 2 unless they print something. And that something being like a true name type card. So basically a creature that was born to carry swords, right? Or a weapon, an equipment that like wins you the game, like GT does, right? If you get a GT down against a creature deck, you've won the game. So until we get one of those two, it's not worth it, right? Because Stoneforge will always be bad against combo and like big mana decks.
Well,
right? So
the entire fair deck is bad against that,
exactly, right? So if you need something to like just obliterate other fair decks, right? Like some equipment or some creature that will just give you the upper hand in the creature matchup, and that will, you'll win those and then you'll lose all the unfair ones, right? But without that, there's just no point to playing Stoneforge.
I can't imagine that we get an equipment that's better than what we already have. Like, it's been since New Phyrexia since we've even had a standard playable equipment. So maybe in like a future Modern Horizons or something, but I would be really shocked if all of a sudden we got like, something better than Batterskull and Swords.
Like, I've seen people fetching their Sword of the Meeks with Stoneforges. Like, it could be something like that.
There was that Esper Urza like deck that is kind of like a mid-range deck. Did you see that? It's an Esper Urza deck.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, I forgot where I saw it. I know it was somewhere online, but it was interesting. I don't know why I would play it over just Urza and just kill him. But
to get the mid-range value, to gain 4 life on every attack.
I mean, there
you
is
can tap
the value.
your Batterskull for a mana. Like, that's so nice.
Hey, that's a. Can I use it to play a Teferi?
I actually want to see a Red and 6 Stoneforge deck. Like
Naya?
Yeah, like I don't know how you would do this, right? But like all that extra mana you're getting from Red and 6 will let you actually pick up and drop your Batterskull again.
I do love like when you play your Stoneforge on turn 2 and it gets pathed, and then they just naturally ramp you into your Batterskull. So I think you probably don't run into that problem playing your like Gruul deck or Jund deck, but against other white-based decks, you're pretty okay with your Stoneforge getting pathed. You're like, sure,
you're always
like
okay with
Hardcast my
anything getting
Batterskull.
pathed. It's like free lands, yes.
Yeah, I actually don't. I feel real bad. Like if there's a reason why I'm not just on blue-white, because on turn 2, if I see a Stoneforge and I have to path that, I'm like, oh no. What if they just go into like Jace or something like that? I'm just like, all right.
You vapor snag it.
Oh, yes. Richard's still on the vapor snag plan.
I guess you can dismember it. That's like your only option.
I just fatal push it. Just push it.
Oh, yeah, you can play black then.
Yeah, you just play Esper, and then you'll get to have Esper charms. Which, I mean, I guess if we also count that, I recently went to my FNM, and I did fairly well with Stoneforge there, but that's just because the entire meta at my LGS is just nothing but blue-white control. So,
all right, so. That's modern. It's awesome. I think we all agree on that. Let's talk a little bit about Arena, though. We got a pretty big Arena announcement. We've been waiting to kind of get more details on the historic format. The, I guess, Arena modern, quote unquote, like saying that very loosely, but the non-rotating format on Arena. This week, we got the announcement. Richard, why don't do you have the kind of TLDR for everyone before we jump into it?
Yes, we're moving from good modern to bad modern. So Wizards released a bunch of news on Historic. So we know Historic was going to be a non-rotating format for Arena. However, people were very upset this week, right? And kind of the big news of Historic is wild cards will cost twice as much to when you craft something that's historic. So 2 rare wildcards for rare, 2 mythic wildcards for mythic. They're adding 15 to 20 cards from quote-unquote Magic's history roughly every quarter. And then if you want to buy packs, they come in 45-pack bundles. And I think that's it. And they're going to add historic events once a month. They're going to have a limited time queue, and then your constructed rank will share between historic and standard.
I think it's once a quarter for a month. So like 4 times a year for a month. There'll be a competitive historic event, if I'm understanding it right.
I thought, hold on, wait. So
Wait, what?
I thought there was an event every month.
Yeah. So I think the events are like, you know, like our planeswalking vacation events and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And then the queues will be there, I believe.
Oh, the queues will be going up once a quarter. So you'll be able to play like a ranked queue once a quarter for a month. I remember them saying like the month before new set releases, they would have up like the queues for historic. But maybe there's just multiple announcements there. But regardless, they will have some events for historic at various times, not evergreen and up all the time. Although you can play casually, right? At any time with historic, but the actual like events and queues will come and go. So what do you think about, let's start with the X2 wild cards. I think that is the thing that's drawn the most attention. If you've been to the Magic Arena subreddit in the last week, endless posts and complaints. Same with Twitter and social media. People are not happy about paying twice as much for historic cards, wild card wise. What do you guys think about that? Like, first off, do you think it's good? Secondly, why do you think they're doing this? Do you put any weight in the argument that Wizards is intentionally making a bad announcement so then they can walk it back and look like the good guys a couple weeks from now, which is one of the big theories running around on the various social media platforms?
So I think it's bad because they've defeated the purpose of the wild card. Like, what if I told you that the good mythics in standard cost 2x as much as the bad mythics, right? Because, you know, they're better, right? If it's a fairy in real life costs $30, why can we get it with one? Like, the whole point of wild card is supposed to, you know, make any card of that type. And what Wizards is saying is historic cards are worth more. They're more valuable. You can play them forever. So we're going to make them cost twice as much. 2 wild cards. But that defeats the whole point of wild cards. They are using a construct we have from paper Magic, in that old cards are more expensive, right? Because old cards, they're older, right? Like, they didn't print as many, they're harder to acquire, you just can't go to the store and get some. And, you know, they've used this to prop up their master set, modern masters and things like that. And then they're like, oh, but, you know, we don't want to alienate LGS owners and things like that if we just tank the price of all these cards, right? Now we see in a purely digital setting that no longer applies, yet they're still trying to charge you more to play historic. So I think that's bad, but I think that's part of their plan, right? Because if you can build a historic deck for the same price of a standard deck and you can play it forever, you're not going to make Wizards any more money, right? So they're incentivized to keep you playing standard and to give you like a passing historic product so you don't feel totally bad, but they don't want you playing it all the time. In the same way, Wizards doesn't want you to only play modern or legacy. They want you to play limited and standard, right? Because that's what makes them money. When you play the other formats, you either make them no money directly or you're giving it to the secondary market. And then on Arena, there's a secondary market, so you're not giving them any money. So they're trying to make it more expensive so you don't play it, but then there's something there so you don't feel bad. And I think they're trying to double dip, and people are pretty mad about that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I see it too. Like, I don't think that Wizards wants historic to be a heavily played format. I think they it has to exist because you got to be able to do something with your cards after rotation, or you lose a lot of the justification for spending money on cards. If you're like, oh, like, we're going to have rotation in a year, all these cards that I spent hundreds of dollars on, I can't trade them, I can't dust them, I can't do anything with them. So there has to be some sort of historic format just to solve that problem. But I think the X2 pricing, the way the events kind of come and go, all that stuff, to me, it definitely sends a signal that Wizards doesn't want this to be a heavily played format. It'll exist for people who really want to play it, and if you're willing to spend tons of money to put together a historic deck, then Wizards probably okay with that, because they're draining your wild cards, but I don't think they want this to be anywhere near as popular as Standard on Arena.
Yeah. I've got, it's also kind of weird they would do that when, you want to draw people into your brand new format. And, I feel like at launch, hitting people with this kind of news, I don't think many people are going to play unless they already had the cards, like while it was in standard.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a concern. The other thing is, transitioning to the other big part of the announcement with the new cards being added, 15 or 20 new cards every quarter, so like 4 times a year. I think one of the things some people were looking for from Historic was maybe paper portability. So maybe this format would develop into something in paper. And I feel like the way that Wizards is managing the format with just adding these new cards means that it's very unlikely to have any relevance in paper. Like, could you imagine a modern type format or frontier type format where just like 15 or 20 random powerful cards were added every 3 months? Like, I don't think you could keep up with that in paper or would want to try to keep up with that in paper. So it does seem like that kind of locks Historic into being arena only, in my opinion.
Yeah. I definitely think that it'll just be an arena thing. I mean, I don't know how they're going. I am curious how they're picking these cards, right? They said that they didn't want to just release full sets because they didn't want to just make it so that they spend all this time releasing full sets and only like 2 cards from each set get like played.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of Magic, right? Like, you release cards and you let the players decide what's meta, right? They released Hogak. They thought Hogak was fine, right? And then the Magic community, through innovation, was like, yes, right? This is how we do it, right? Like, we put all this together and here's a deck. By only 15 to 20 cards, they are shaping the meta, right? And, they're going to dictate what the meta looks like based on these 15 to 20 cards, right? So either they're absurdly good and they, produce a deck that's good. Like, for example, imagine if, 7 of those cards were like Tron pieces. Right?
No, thank
like,
you.
You just automatically made
Richard.
Tron. Like, there's no questions about it, right? But if they don't do that, these cards won't get played at all, right? Imagine if they just put in, like, I don't know, just like fringe 5 drops that people played in standard, which is what I think they're actually going to do.
Like
it's not going to really shake up the meta, and the impact of this is basically nothing, right? So my guess is they're actually going to sculpt, right? They're like, oh, okay, this time we're going to power up Dredge or something, and this time we're going to power up mid-range, and they're really going to change Modern, and like that's not the appeal of these old formats, right? The appeal of these old formats is that they're actually old and stable, so that if you pick up your Jund list from 2 years ago, you can come in and still have a fighting chance and not be like, whoa, what happened here? Like, they introduced Tron and Eldrazi in the meantime, right? Like, so I don't like this. Like, I just don't like how they've done this, right? Like, making it more expensive, curating the format itself, because the cards they add are so little. Like, I think they should have just full out made like a couple master sets, kind of like what Magic Online did with the Masters editions, right? They didn't, when they launched, they didn't have all of Legacy available, right? But they made several sets, like just packed full of the best cards, but the sets were fairly big, and then players could then build the decks they wanted, right? So
that also gives you a draft format, which it seems like that would be pretty profitable for Wizards. Like, could you imagine if you could draft a Masters Edition style set? Like, that would be super popular and make Wizards a lot of money. So, I would like that too, I think, better. I think, number 1, I wish they would just start backfilling sets. Number 2, the Masters set edition would be sweet. I don't really like this plan. I like it as someone who enjoys rotation and enjoys formats changing. Like, as a player, I think it's going to be cool to see what new cards show up. On the other hand, I have a really real concern that this will kind of come across a little money grabby. Like, it would be so easy for this to turn into sort of a rotation almost, where like, if you see some of the cards they listed off, like Worm Coils and Dark Confidants and Brainstorms, those are like banned in various restricted and vintage and like broken and modern type cards. Like those, it's not like they named off some random like nostalgic 5-drop that everyone forgot about. So I
did they confirm those cards will be there, or were they just examples?
Those were there. We're thinking about cards like this, but we want your feedback. But this was our list, not confirmed to be in, but those were their examples of the type of cards they were looking to add.
Jace. Oh my God. Is there a Jace?
They will add Jace. They will most definitely add. I think they will add iconic planeswalkers. So
Jace Bellerin.
hopefully it's Mind Sculptor, not Bellerin, right? Like,
and what you've been waiting for behind the curtain, Jace Bellerin.
But like, how do you get into this format? Like, I can play Historic because I have a full standard collection, so I guess like it's not too bad for me.
Do you have 20 times 2 wild cards every quarter to get the new cards?
Well, that's the issue. Like, I can play Historic when it launches, but can I even invest in this format knowing that 3 months from now, like the entire meta or the deck that I invested X2 wild cards in is just invalidated by some random old cards that Wizards decide to put in the format? Like, how can you... It seems very hard to justify spending a very expensive price compared to standard to play a format that is not stable. Like, the reason I can feel like when I bought Mono Red Prison in paper, when I bought that deck, I spent like $1,000, and my justification was like, okay, if I ever need this money, I can sell my Chalice to the Voids and Ensnaring Bridges. Like, I can get most of my money back out of it. That doesn't work that way in Arena. So like, who can invest X to the price to play a format that your deck could get invalidated any 3-month period with these new cards coming in? Like, who's going to play this format? Like, who can in their right mind, like, justify investing that price tag in such an unstable format?
Yeah, like, I could see this definitely being a thing where maybe I play it for, like, the first 2 months or something, and then once another rotation happens or something like that, or anything, or they release like 15 cards that I want, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pay 2 wild cards per card, and like, people are already afraid to spend 1 wild card, right? And the nice thing about older formats was, example, I get to try things like Pulse of the Field and know that it's like dirt cheap and it's irrelevant. I get to meme around, but am I going to meme around if it costs me 2 times the wild card? You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, oh, sorry, no, I'm only going to try hard this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the problem is there's no budget option on Arena, right? Like, in Modern, just random rare that no one plays is really cheap. Whereas on Arena, all the rares cost the same. But not only that, it costs 2x now for Historic, and that's going to bite into your standard playing, right? So maybe you have an excess of wild cards today, but if you spend them all crafting your Historic deck, when the next standard set comes out, you have nothing left, which is kind of what Wizards wants, right? Because then you have to fork over the money to buy the gems, to buy the wild cards back, right? But I think people are just not going to play this format. Like, it's expensive. It doesn't even, we don't know how balanced it will be. We don't know what it's going to look like. But making it expensive off the bat is not a way to get people to play. Like, this is like a weird marketing ploy, right? Like, I think they will drop the price. I don't know if that was their plan initially. I think they actually were trying to just get away with charging people more. But even then, like, I don't know. Like, it's still a lot of investment to play in this format, which has like very limited support based on how they're treating it.
Kinda a little disappointing. I mean, I was kinda hoping that it would be something more than that. So I'm glad it exists. There is technically a way to play your cards after rotation, but some of these choices have made me much less excited about the future of the Historic format. I don't want to go too far, but it almost feels like it's just dead on arrival. I can't imagine enough people buy into this format to make it relevant.
It feels like extended. That's what it feels like. And people didn't like that.
Would you say that if they changed it to 1 wild card per card, do you still think do you then think the format would be popular?
I think that would help, but I still think that with some of the other aspects of it, not having a like competitive aspect all the time, although maybe that'll come in the future. Like, there are changes they could make that I think would make it more popular, but I don't know if they want that. Like, I think they even said in their live stream, like, Arena is about standard. Like, that's the focus of Arena as a client. So we're going to provide Historic, but we're remembering that our number one focus is on standard. So I'm not sure if Wizards would be willing to make enough changes or be so generous with Historic that it would actually take off and be like a super popular format.
I mean, I thought it was, once again, like, I do think there is a ranked for it. It starts in December. I'm going to have to reread.
Like, the announcement says there's ranked play, but right. I remember initially reading the Reddit post, people were very upset of no ranked play.
Right.
So I don't know if they've updated this announcement since then, or people were confused, or were just misunderstanding it.
Yeah.
But in December there's ranked play.
Like
and
it
then,
starts in it, like it says.
Oh wait, I know what it is. Every quarter there's ranked play
For 1 month. There's
so
ranked
in December
play for
there's
1
ranked
month
play,
a quarter.
but then it says quarterly there's also ranked play, which means every quarter you can play ranked historic, and it starts in December.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
And so we're.
Because I remember the Reddit
looking
comments.
for
People
a
were
monthly.
very upset about this.
Like they're looking for a monthly ranked play, like just
They're looking
every
like
month.
basically
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, all
right?
the time.
Like, which just makes it even more absurd, right? Like, oh, you want me to spend 2x the price, get all these new cards, and I can play it once a quarter, like for a month? Like what?
Yeah, that
It's weird. It's certainly weird, but I don't know. Like either way, this format would have been unpopular on arrival. Let's say they made it, cheap. Let's say they made a master set. The format would probably still suck, right? Like you probably have to wait a year or two for the card pool to be big enough such that it is sufficiently different from standard yet balanced. But by handicapping it like this and making it more expensive and limiting everything, it just makes it even deader on arrival.
What if, yeah, like they made it cheaper. They made it ranked every month, but like they started with the earliest set on Arena, like just releasing the full sets. Would that make it better? It would be something different.
I think the format would kind of still suck, but there'd be less outrage. Like people would be more understanding, right? People would be like, yeah, you have to wait a bit for the card pool to get up. But here it's just like, why are you slapping me in the face, right? Like why are you charging me even more money? I feel bad.
Yeah, it definitely is a feel bad kind of situation with the model they have. But, like this is kind of like the only thing we've got right now for any kind of, non-rotating play on Arena. So for me, I think as someone that does, like, this is the one thing that I kind of find cool is that someone that constantly plays Arena, like all stream all day long and stuff like that. It is nice to play a non-standard format, but what if I just play Brawl instead? Like where things
Wizards would want that, right?
I
think that's the point, right? I think the point is you're like, I could play this, but it's kind of expensive, and I'd rather play this other thing, which actually in the long run is more expensive, but it doesn't feel like it, right? And they want you to play Brawl, and they want you to play Standard.
Right.
But then you feel safe investing in that because after rotation, you can always play Historic if you want. Like, I think that's the whole plan, right?
I think so. I think they want people to play rotating formats for the most part is my take on it. Although I talked to a couple Wizards people while I was in Vegas and told them that they should make Brawl historic, and I think that would make it better. So we'll see. I'm going to keep pushing for that.
Have any of you guys played the H game?
Hearthstone. I was like, what is the H game? I mean, sorry, yes, the H
Not recently.
Hearthstone.
Have you guys played Wild at all? Or
I did.
How popular is Wild compared to their Standard?
Well,
I've heard it's not popular, but I've never played it.
It's nowhere near. I don't think it's. Maybe it's changed, but when I was playing, which was maybe about a year ago, I played up until Arena's release. And so yeah, like it was still, there were still people in it, right? Because they didn't. There was a decent amount.
Ringing endorsement.
No.
There were
okay,
people in it.
That sounds much worse than it actually is. But no, there's a decent amount of people in it, and it's just not as much as the standard queues, right? I think I hit Legend, and then hypothetically, if I played the H word, I hit Legend, and then upon hitting Legend, I was somewhere in the 300s of Legend, right? And then I climbed my way up fairly easily to about top 100. On Wild, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, it felt fun though.
I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, maybe Historic wouldn't be a threat to Standard anyway? Like if Wild, cause Wild on Hearthstone, from what I understand, it costs the same, right? You can dust, the cards cost the same. Like maybe Wizards is being too safe with Historic and going too far to make sure it's not competing with Standard, because when you think about it, like Standard, you're getting new sets every 3 months. You're getting tournament coverage. You're getting tons of content. Like there's a lot of reasons for people to play standard over historic anyway. So maybe like charging people double just isn't necessary for Wizards to achieve their goal of making sure that standard is the primary format on Arena.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of just pretty much what like how like the like everyone's like viewing it as, like, why, like, I'm gonna probably just play standard anyways, because, you know, if I'm just getting into the game, I'm probably not gonna want to play all like the old cards and new cards and learn what they all do. I'm gonna just learn what's in standard now because it's the most relevant thing, right?
Yeah, and it seems prohibitively expensive for a new, like, let's say you start playing, I don't know, 6 months from now, next spring sometime, you pick up Arena. There's no way you're gonna spend the amount necessary to build a historic deck over a standard deck. Like, basically no chance. It would just be so expensive if you're just starting out. And I think that's the other reason I'm worried about the long-term future of the format. Like, it's fine for all of us, or like fine-ish for all of us who have been playing since the beta and like have a pretty good collection of standard cards that we can build from. But if you're just starting off a year from now, how are any of those people going to play historic? Like, it just seems way too hard and expensive to get into, and it'll get harder and more expensive as more Worm Coils and Dark Confidants and like must-own staples keep getting added to the format. So it seems like you'll just like slowly get less and less players as it becomes harder and harder for a new player to actually build a collection for it.
Unless they
by
fix
design.
this. And the format, for some odd reason, the cards they pick are just so much fun that, like, what if, okay, this might seem weird, but what if this format is just ridiculously fun?
Like, if they add Panharmonicon in the first batch of cards, then we're good. I'm in. I'm all the way in. I'll pay X4
so
for my
they're gonna add Jace,
Panharmonicons.
they add Panharmonicon, and the only people queued up are you and me. We're just gonna
Yes,
battle
man,
each other
yes,
all the
my
time.
Panharmonicons against your Jaces.
So before we move on to Fishmail, I do want to say something about Seth's point, though, right? The language that they use describing these formats, they always say historic is a place for more experienced players, right? And new players are supposed to go to standard. So that's exactly what they want, right? If you pick up this game, they don't want you playing historic, this thing that you can play forever. They want you to get sucked into the standard treadmill. And then for people like Krim, who play like 8 million hours of Magic every day, and you're like, look, I'm done with standard. Here's this other format I can play. Like, I think that's like their ideal case. They don't want the new player hopping directly onto historic. They want it to be for people who have spent so much time and money in Magic, they have nothing better to do. Here's historic. Right? Like, that's the experienced player, right? The advanced player, right?
I think the problem is, though, like, let's say you start a year from now and play for 2 or 3 years, so you're like an experienced or advanced player. It's probably still going to be really prohibitively expensive for you to get into historic, because you're not going to have the first 2 years of cards. You're going to miss out on a year of these new cards that are added, like, and everything costs twice as much, assuming that doesn't change, and you can't spend gold. You can only buy the cards with gems. Like, even an experienced player that starts a year from now is going to have a hard time getting into it, I think.
But you can say all of that for Modern. Right? If you use Krim's point, like, what if this format is actually fun, right? If it's actually fun, the fact that it costs 2x or 3x more is kind of what Wizards wants, and that's exactly what Modern is, right? For like a couple $100, you can buy standard deck, but like the average Modern deck starts at like
1,000,
you know, 500-600, going all the way up to like 1,500, 2,000. Ridiculously expensive, and no new player would ever do that. But you know, after years of conditioning of buying like $50 mythics in standard, one day you make the leap and you're like, look, I'm going to spend $2,000 on this deck.
I'm going to buy a
And here I
playset
am,
of
right?
Scalding
Like,
Tarns.
this is how it works, right?
But you don't have the I'm going to spend $2,000, but if I ever need to, I can trade or sell whatever my cards problem. Like,
That's true.
are there people that are going to, I'll spend
But how many
$2,000
people actually sell back their Magic decks?
eventually. A lot of people, I think. Like, I think a lot of people eventually like quit the game and sell their cards, or you decide you don't want that deck anymore. You spend $1,000 on Mono Red Prison. You're like, I really want to play whatever, a Stoneforge deck. So you trade away your expensive stuff to like build a new deck.
I find that oftentimes I will say that I'm gonna buy this because I can always sell it later, but I never sell it, and and it gets reprinted into the ground. Oh, these Tarmogoyfs how much are they now? They're like $30. Okay, cool.
It at least helps psychologically. Even if I probably will never sell my mono red prison deck, but the thought that I could made me feel okay about pulling $1,000 out of my pocket for cardboard.
I was telling you guys, I was like sorting all my cards, building the Oathbreaker decks and stuff, and I'm like, I have a lot of money in cards, which I like totally forgot about, right? Like I have like several thousands of dollars, and I'm like, should I bring my trade binder to Magic Fest Vegas? And I'm like, do I need to carry around like, I don't know what it is, like $10,000 worth of stuff, right? Like this seems really bad, right? And it just creeps up on you, right? You get used to it. Couple dual lands here, a couple Lilianas there, and like you're like, wow, this is a lot of money. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I don't know.
If I actually process, like, when I sit down and think about it, like, yeah, if I have all these expensive cards, I then get scared to bring them out. I get scared to shuffle them, so I just don't think about how much the cards cost because I'm like, oh, hold on, actually, I'm gonna drop from the tournament. I don't want to shuffle my foil Jace.
All right, so we should probably move on. We're running a bit long. We gotta hit up some fish mail this week because we missed it last week. So, Richard, fish mail us, please.
All right, if you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. So, good news, boys. We've answered like half the questions because they're about historic and new modern. So, I'm going to try to find some very specific questions. I'm looking for non-modern questions. I'm still going. Okay, how about this? How about this one? This is a modern question, but it's slightly different. Actually, no, wait. I changed my mind. Okay, here. Alex32359. I'm thinking of getting back into modern after a 4-year hiatus. My favorite decks are grindy mid-range decks with recursion/disruption, but I don't want to spend $2,000, so that rules out Jund. What do you guys recommend?
So
rules out Stoneforge decks.
Stoneforge is expensive.
We didn't talk about it, but Stoneforge and basically every equipment and every Kolaghan's command like went up by like $1 million.
Yeah, they all like doubled pretty much. Like Stoneforge is like $70 or something like that. I mean, I would like if you like grindy games, you could, and you don't want to spend like $1 billion, you could try to go for the Vizier combo deck. I know that it has combo in the name, but you actually kind of grind mostly.
Yeah, maybe Death and Taxes could work. That's like one of the cheaper-ish decks. It's kind of like in that space a little bit. Modern is expensive right now. I'm just like looking at these deck prices like, wow, like everything costs so much money at the moment.
You could go Mardu Shadow if you want. That's popular and it's pretty grindy. The fetch lands. Though. Well, the fetch, I guess, okay. To me, it's not as expensive because it's not playing blue. So yeah, fetch lands are still like $30, but it's better than $100 for like a Scalding
Would
Tarn.
one consider Merfolk a mid-range deck?
No.
Not really.
What is it, an aggro deck? It's like so slow.
I think it's like I consider it aggro,
it's still
even though
aggro.
It's not the fastest
but the
aggro.
Silver Gill at depth value, I don't know. I mean, I think if you want to save money, you got to go like monocolored decks, right?
So burn. But you're not trying to grind with burn. I think if you're grinding with burn.
Is big red a thing? How about mono red prison?
Mono red prison is like, I guess it's cheap compared to Junder Stoneforge decks. There's like mono green prison or land destruction, which is actually really fun and cheap, although it's definitely like kind of a third tier deck. It's not gonna win you a GP most likely, but it 5-0's a league once in a while. Also, I guess maybe this is more control-y than mid-range, but I really like the Wilderness Reclamation Mystical Teachings decks. They're kinda in that space a little bit, and they're a little bit cheaper than some of the other decks out there.
But then you have to buy blue fetches. And they're usually in Sultai, right? So you need like Delta, Misty, and then Verdant.
I think the builds I'm looking at are actually leaning mostly on Prismatic Vista. Like Prismatic Vista, a bunch of basic lands, and maybe like 3 non-Prismatic Vista fetch lands, which helps keep the price down a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, Prismatic Vista is about the same price as like a cheap fetch land.
That's
like
true,
20,
but it's cheap
right?
for a blue fetch land.
Yeah.
Like if you can replace a blue fetch land with it, yeah.
I mean, yeah,
right.
that's a deck you can build.
Oh crap, what now? That's their Twitter handle. How would you enjoy a spell skite that had cost, grant me hexproof? I always thought it'd be fun to use the stack like that.
Wait, so I could pay 2 life to give myself hexproof?
Self-hexproof, yes.
Oh, that's way too broken. And it costs Phyrexian mana? Like, can you imagine just sitting there with that and just like, oh, that's so cute. Did you just try to discard spell me at sorcery speed?
I mean, is it too broken? Maybe it is. We have like Leyline.
It's a good sideboard card, right?
I think it would be pretty broken. Okay, so it does everything that Spellskite does and gives you hexproof?
No, I think it only gives you hexproof.
Only gives me hexproof.
So instead of protecting permanents,
it'd be like having a leyline on a creature. It's not like it's a sideboard card, right? Like I don't think you could main deck this.
I think you could. Especially right now, if everyone's just trying to fling like firebolts at your face.
But it saves you what, like 1 life, 1.5 life on average. Like it's not.
Well, I think it would actually be fine. I don't think it would be that bad. Like I don't imagine I would main deck it. Maybe in certain metas, like if you're trying to, there's times when you main deck Leyline of Sanctity if the meta is in the right place, but I don't think it would be like an evergreen main deck card. I think it would probably
like
work.
if it's dirt cheap though, if it's like 1-2 mana or something like that. Like if I'm thinking literally just a 2 mana 0/4, but with that ability. Of course, I was also thinking that it could protect your creatures, so that's why that'd be broken.
Yeah.
You didn't even play creatures, Krim.
What creatures are you trying to protect?
Excuse me, Batterskull makes a germ, and on top of that, Snapcaster. but yeah, like I think that would be just decent if it were just the give yourself hexproof thing, right? I mean, you kind of already have that with like what Aegis of the Gods.
Yeah, that just
you know what
gives,
that card does.
That's what 2 mana 1/2 that just gives you hexproof.
Yeah, it's from Theros block.
That never sees play. I think I played it in budget decks a couple times, but other than that, I don't think it's ever seen play.
I think for people that are really scared, so like what can go to your face, right? Either a finisher like Grape Shot,
they could
a discard spell, or burn spells. And usually people have other ways of dealing with burn and storm, and the new Modern Horizons card, what is it? Autumn's Veil? I forgot what it is.
Yeah, Veil of Summer.
That thing's a blowout. So, but you have to play green though, so I guess it depends what color this creature is as well. Because the Theros one, I'm assuming, is not colorless.
It's
right?
white. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That.
All right.
That is not worth.
Benjamin with the T. Is there any reason I should convert my rock deck into Jund in Modern, considering the new meta shift?
Richard.
Ooh, that's a Richard question.
I don't know about convert. Like, I'm pretty sure like you're gonna spend like 2x the price of your current deck to get the red in Jund. I would proxy it and test it. I personally don't like Jund right now, but it's a lot of money, right? With the red and 6s, the seasoned pyromancers, the red mana base, the new fetches, and the new lands. Like, it's a significant change. So I actually think you're basically starting from scratch, right? So I would actually proxy it up and see if you like Jund. I actually don't like Jund right now.
Or if you have like Moto, you could log online, because Jund obviously isn't an arm and a leg online, so you could.
That's still an arm and a leg online.
It is?
It's cheaper than paper, but it's still like
to rent. I mean, you can just rent it, right? There's so many like rental programs.
Yeah, but relative to others. So I'm looking at this random list here. Jund is about 800 ticks online and 1,700 in paper.
It's a lot.
So it's still 800 ticks.
I mean, Ren and 6 is like 400 ticks for 3 copies right now. It's so ridiculously expensive online.
Like, I told the story, but I was looking to upgrading my deck to go to Vegas, and I'm like, it's like $500 just to pick up like Ren and 6s and some seasoned Pyromancer and ley lines, right? I'm like, thank you, I'll pass.
I mean,
it's actually really expensive to add the red if you don't have red yet.
It's up to 130 ticks. That's so insane. It was 18 ticks in June, and now it's the 1st of September, and it is 130.
Yeah.
You know, they almost got they finally got Jund to a point where it was affordable, and then in 6 happened.
I've realized this, that Jund will always be expensive, because any card that goes into Jund is usually like just best in class, period. and those usually command a really high price in standard. Because they're usually, if they're standard playable, they'll be really expensive, right? And then if they're not standard playable, it's a master set, so it's gonna be really expensive anyway. So Fatal Push was our like lucky budget include in the last like 3 years or whatever.
Well, it only recently became budget, right? Because when it came out, it was not budget.
Yeah,
I know that.
All right, last question. T-Fun501. Would it be possible to create a list for what might be considered a historic staple for soon to rotating sets? Let's say rotate, it will feel bad to get 2 wild cards. All right, what's your play on this, guy? So right now,
Hero of
hold on. So we could buy cards right now at 1 wild card instead of 2 wild cards, right? However, do we think they're gonna roll back the 2 wild card change and make it 1 wild card anyway? And you should just wait, or should you stock 3 fairies?
I'm gonna just assume they don't, right? Like if they don't roll it back, like is that like? I can still come up. I can come up with a list, and then with assuming that they don't roll it back. If they don't roll it back, I'd probably look to stuff like History of Benalia, Teferi, mostly just and like actually I'd look to more so the shock like the like glacial fortresses, the drowned catacombs, the buddy lands. Pretty much I'd be looking into all the key rares right now because rare wild cards are the ones that are the most difficult to come by because you need the most of them, of all the rare cards, of all the wild cards. So I'd load up on all the staple rares that I could, and I'd start with the mana base.
I think that's good advice. I also was going to say you can look at the format staple page for standard, which will essentially be historic at the starting point. So that can give you a good starting point to just like see what's doing well in standard. And at least until we start getting new cards, a lot of the same cards should do well in historic, assuming Throne of Eldraine itself doesn't shake things up too much, but it should give you a good idea of the staples. Also, like, honestly, I don't know if I would recommend someone buying into historic at this point. I might just wait and see, like, I don't know. If you think it's going to be fun and you're excited about it, go for it. But I honestly think financially, and as far as how much gameplay you can do with a format, you're probably better off making sure your standard collection is up to par first. Like, if you're buying historic stuff and not having everything you need for standard, you're probably kind of doing MTG Arena backwards a little bit.
Yeah, I would wait. So I would say, I would follow what Krim said, but I would wait until late October to do anything. Because November is when they're officially increasing the price 2 to 1. So if you wait until October, you have at least another 6 weeks or 8 weeks of either more information, so they'll give us more information about historic, or they'll make changes. Right? Whatever the changes are, maybe they'll add more cards, maybe they'll reduce the rate, but you still have quite a bit of time, and you don't really lose anything from waiting, right? It's not like Paper or Magic Online where the price is going to increase as people catch on and things like that. Like, the price will be 1 wild card until, at least until end of October. So I would just wait until then, and then that's when you can go craft everything if you're all gung-ho on historic, once we have all the information. So that's all the fish mail we have time for this week. Thank you to everyone who sent them in. If you have questions, you can send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 240 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks again to Spikes Academy for supporting the show. You can get 5% off over at spikesacademy.com with the code GOLDFISH. So, thank you to them as well. And on that note, we'll be signing out for the week. So we'll be back next week. I believe Throne of Eldraine spoilers will have started by then. Keep an eye out. Apparently there's some preview show at some point that hasn't been announced tomorrow if you want an early fix of Throne of Eldraine. So we'll be back to talk about all that and anything else that happens in the world of Magic. So until then, this is the crew signing out.